That's for sure. I mean, I think directionally, I can tell you what I hope the future has, as opposed to maybe what it will be, because this may just be wishful thinking. I mean, I hope we are out there on Mars and maybe beyond Mars, the moons of Jupiter. I hope we're traveling frequently throughout the solar system, perhaps preparing for missions to nearby star systems. I think all of this is possible within 50 years. And I think that would be very exciting to do that. And I think we'll see autonomy and artificial intelligence advance tremendously. I think that's actually quite near term. My guess is in probably 10 years, it will be very unusual for cars to be built that are not fully autonomous. Earth's gravity well is quite deep. Earth has a relatively, fairly high gravity. The difficulty of making a rocket reusable is much greater than the difficulty of making an aircraft reusable. And that's why a fully reusable rocket has never been developed thus far. But if you use the most advanced materials, most advanced design techniques, and you get everything just right, then I'm confident that you can do a fully reusable rocket. Fortunately, if Earth's gravity was even 10% stronger, I would say it would be impossible.
The largest global government summit, we have over 139 government here. If you want to advise government official to be ready for the future, what is 3 things or 3 advice you'll give them?
Well, I think the first bit of advice would be to really pay close attention to the development of artificial intelligence. I think we need to just be very careful in how we adopt artificial intelligence and to make sure that researchers don't get carried away. Because sometimes what happens is a scientist can get so engrossed in their work, they don't necessarily realize the ramifications of what they're doing. So I think it's important for public safety that governments keep a close eye on artificial intelligence and make sure that it does not represent a danger to the public. Let's see. Secondly, I would say we do need to think about transport in general. And there's the movement towards electric vehicles, sustainable transport. I think that's going to be good for many reasons, but again, not something that happens immediately. That'll happen slower than the self-driving vehicles. So that's probably something that happens over 30 or 40 years, the transition to electric vehicles. So thinking about that in context, the demand for electricity will increase dramatically. So currently, in terms of total energy usage in the world, it's about 1/3 electricity, about 1/3 transport, about 1/3 heating. So over time, that will transition to almost all, not all, but predominantly electricity, which means that the demand for electricity will probably triple. So it's going to be very important to think about how do you make so much more electricity.
Seem they have an easy job. That's it. There is no more challenges for them.
No, well, then I think maybe these things do play into each other a little bit. But what to do about mass unemployment? This is going to be a massive social challenge. And I think ultimately we will have to have some kind of universal basic income. I don't think we're going to have a choice.
Universal basic income.
Universal basic income. I think it's going to be necessary.
So it means that unemployed people will be paid across the globe.
Yeah.
Because there is no job, robot is taking over.
There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better. That's simply and I want to be clear that these are not things that I think that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. And if my assessment is correct and they probably will happen, then we need to say, what are we going to do about it? And I think some kind of a universal basic income is going to be necessary. Now, the output of goods and services will be extremely high. So with automation, there will come abundance. There will be almost everything will get very cheap. I think I think we'll just end up doing a universal basic income. It's going to be necessary. The harder challenge, much harder challenge, is how do people then have meaning? Like a lot of people, they derive their meaning from their employment. So if you don't have, if you're not needed, if there's not a need for your labor, how do you, what's the meaning? Do you have meaning? Do you feel useless? That's a much harder problem to deal with. And then how do we ensure that the future is going to be the future that we want?
Time is over. I'll ask you just one last question,
Sure.
if you allow me. In the World Government Summit, we have so many people so many young people actually, from across the globe. If you have an advice to them, young people globally who want to be like Elon Musk, what's your advice to them?
I think that probably they shouldn't want to be.
You?
I think it sounds better than it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not as much fun being me as you'd think. I don't know.
You don't think so?
No. There's definitely, it could be worse for sure, but it's, I'm not sure I'm not sure I want to be me.
Okay.
But I think advice, I mean, if you want to make progress in things, I think that the best analytical framework for understanding the future is physics. I'd recommend studying the thinking process around physics, like not the equations. I mean, the equations certainly they're helpful, but the way of thinking in physics is it's the best framework for understanding things that are counterintuitive. And always taking the position that you're to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong over time. I think one of the biggest mistakes people generally make, and I'm guilty of it too, is wishful thinking. Like you want something to be true, even if it isn't true. And so you ignore the things that, you ignore the real truth because of what you want to be true. This is a very difficult trap to avoid. And like I said, it's certainly one that I find myself in having problems with. But if you just take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong, and solicit critical feedback, particularly from friends. Like particularly friends, if somebody loves you, they want the best for you. They don't want to tell you the bad things. So you have to ask them, and say, really, I really do want to know. and then they'll tell you.
Thank you very much. It's been it is great for the World Government Summit to have a legend who's creating the future for humanity to share his thought, his idea, his vision, his challenges, and his hope for life. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.